On February 28, 1986, an ordinary winter night in Stockholm, Sweden, was pierced by an extraordinary act of violence that continues to baffle the world to this day. Olof Palme, the sitting prime minister, was brutally shot at close range while returning home from a late-night trip to the cinema with his wife, Lisbeth Palme. A grim echo reverberated through the serene streets of the city. Its shock waves felt around the globe, thereby commencing an era of intrigue, bafflement, and relentless pursuit for truth. Sweden, a country celebrated for its egalitarian ideals, its commitment to neutrality, and one of the world's highest standards of living, was abruptly and violently thrust into the international spotlight. The tranquility of this peaceful nation was shattered, exposing the unsettling truth that danger can lurk even within the most peaceful havens. This was the first political assassination in Sweden since the murder of King Gustav III in 1792, and the profound impact of this event continues to resonate in Swedish society. Born to a middle-class family in Stockholm in 1927, Olof Palme was known for his intellectual charisma and unwavering conviction. Over the course of his life, he gradually ascended the echelons of Swedish politics, serving as prime minister from 1969 to 1976, and then again from 1982 until his untimely death in 1986. Palme's political ideology was rooted in progressive idealism. He was unafraid to voice his opinions on contentious issues that other world leaders often shed away from. His fervent opposition to the Vietnam War, his unwavering support for Third World liberation movements, and his commitment to nuclear disarmament painted him as a highly polarizing figure, both at home and abroad. His unyielding belief in social justice and equity earned him numerous admirers, but it also alienated certain factions, leading to a surge in discontent and hostility against him. On the night of the murder, Prime Minister Olof Palme decided to take a last-minute trip to the cinema with his family. Embracing the joy of a spontaneous evening plan, Palme and his wife Lisbeth agreed to join their son Morten and his girlfriend for a screening of the Swedish comedy Bröderna Mozart. Around 8 p.m., the couple left their apartment unescorted, blending seamlessly into the late winter evening's bustle. The Palmes' decision to leave their security detail behind was noted by several onlookers as they strolled towards the Gamla Stan metro station. These citizens, accustomed to their prime minister's modest lifestyle, unknowingly bore witness to the beginning of a night that would forever mark their nation's history. Alighting the subway at Rådhusgatan station, the couple made their way to the Grand Cinema. Arriving at 9 p.m., they rendezvoused with Morten and his companion. Olof Palme was a familiar figure to the theater staff, and the Prime Minister and his wife were given the director's reserved seats. As the credits rolled and laughter from the film still echoed in the auditorium, the two couples emerged from the cinema. They lingered, indulging in lighthearted banter and shared smiles, unaware that these were some of the last normal moments they'd enjoy. At around 11:15 p.m., they parted ways and the Palmes began their fateful journey home. Under the cold, Nordic sky, they leisurely strolled down the west sides of Sveavägen. A whimsical detour brought them to a shop window that caught their attention. Resuming their walk, they crossed the Sveavägen and continued along the east side, passing the corner of Sveavägen and Tunnelgatan, where the Dekorima shop stood. Suddenly, at precisely 11:21 and 30 seconds, their peaceful night shattered. From the darkness, a figure emerged and fired 2 shots. The first bullet fatally pierced Olof Palme's back. The second grazed Lisbeth. The quiet of the night was broken by the blasts, and the echoes of the gunfire marked the tragic end of an era. Within seconds of the shooting, a distress call was made by a witness, although it was initially misdirected. At 11:23 and 40 seconds, a taxi switchboard operator relayed a message from one of its drivers about a shooting on the corner of Sveavägen and Tunnelgatan. By 11:24 p.m., a police patrol station nearby arrived at the crime scene. Ambulances were flagged down, and by 11:28, the victims were en route to the Sabbatsberg Hospital. At 12:06 a.m., the hospital pronounced the devastating news. Prime Minister Olof Palme was dead. The news of Palme's assassination plunged the nation into shock and mourning. At 12:45 a.m., Deputy Prime Minister Ingvar Carlsson arrived at Rosenbad, stepping into the giant void left by his predecessor. At 1:10 a.m., the somber news was broadcast on radio and later on television at 4 a.m. The government held a press conference at 5:15 a.m., addressing the nation now grappling with the harsh new reality. When the initial shock of Palme's murder subsided, investigators were left with an intricate puzzle. Suspicion fell upon a wide range of possible culprits. These included foreign Secret Service agents, due to Palme's criticism of various international superpowers, right-wing extremists displeased with his domestic policies, and disgruntled elements within Sweden's own law enforcement. In the aftermath of the assassination, the only forensic clues left by the unidentified killer were 2 spent bullets, Winchester Western .357 Magnum 158-grain metal-piercing rounds. The lead fragments of these rounds matched those found in the clothing of Olof and Lisbeth Palme. Evidently, the gun used was a revolver, a type that doesn't automatically eject its cartridge cases. Hence, there were no cases to be found at the crime scene, just the 2 bullets on the street. Upon examining these bullets, investigators gleaned from their intact state that they must have been fired from a barrel of no less than 10 centimeters or 4 inches in length, signifying a significantly large handgun. Notably, the Smith & Wesson .357 Magnum is the weapon most frequently associated with this type of ammunition, propelling investigators to embark on an extensive search for such a firearm. In a display of thoroughness, Swedish law enforcement test-fired nearly 500 Magnum revolvers during their investigation. 10 stolen Magnums bore a particular significance to this case. All but one, infamously known as the Suxdorf revolver, were tracked down. This weapon had been stolen from the residence of renowned Swedish filmmaker Arne Suxdorf back in 1977. Intriguingly, a close associate of drug dealer Sigvard Sigge Cedergren, the thief, confessed on his deathbed to lending a gun identical to this one to Christer Pettersson 2 months before the assassination. Alongside the Suxdorf revolver, the Mockfjord gun holds a prominent place in the investigation's narrative. The Smith & Wesson Model 28, a .357 Magnum revolver, was legally acquired by a resident of the northern Swedish city of Luleå. In 1983, it was stolen, along with 91 metal-piercing bullets, during a burglary in Haparanda. The weapon was allegedly used in a post office robbery in Mockfjord, Dalarna, that same year. Lead isotope analysis connected a bullet fired during that robbery to the bullets found at the Palme assassination scene. They shared the same isotope composition, indicating they were from the same manufacturing batch. Years later, in the autumn of 2006, acting on a tip-off, the Swedish police retrieved a Smith & Wesson .357 revolver from a lake in Dalarna. Unfortunately, extensive rust damage precluded definitive forensic analysis. In 2021, a breakthrough came when another Smith & Wesson .357 Magnum was discovered in the Valstaviken River in West Stockholm by a man named Paul Darcy. But the significance of this find has yet to been rolled into the case. In the days that followed Olof Palme's assassination, a wide array of suspects emerged. Christer Pettersson, a troubled figure with a history of drug abuse and criminal activity, was the main suspect in the murder. After a thorough investigation, he was eventually convicted of the murder in 1988. His arrest relied heavily on the identification made by Palme's widow, who firmly believed she was looking at her husband's killer in the courtroom. However, the case was overturned on appeal. The 3 major factors contributing to this were the failure to produce the murder weapon, an unclear motive for the killing, and doubts about the reliability of Mrs. Palmer's identification of Pettersson. The court cited extremely gross errors by the police in setting up the lineup, which tainted its credibility. Pettersson, known for his alcohol abuse, was allegedly allowed to appear in an inebriated state during the lineup, potentially biasing Mrs. Palme's identification. In the late 1990s, new evidence against Pettersson emerged, primarily from criminal circles. Even a purported confession by Pettersson surfaced, raising speculation that the case could be reopened. However, Chief Prosecutor Agneta Blidberg asserted that a confession alone would not be enough. She emphasized the necessity of information about the weapon used in the assassination, which remained undiscovered. Although Pettersson died in 2004, the mystery surrounding his alleged involvement in the Palme assassination deepened when in 2006 a documentary aired on Swedish state television. According to the program, Pettersson's associates claimed he confessed to them that he was indeed the shooter, but that he'd mistaken Palme for a local drug dealer who bore a striking resemblance to the politician. This startling revelation, along with claims that the police surveillance of drug activity in the area was more intense than previously disclosed, led to a review of the case and Pettersson's potential involvement. But the documentary faced severe criticism, accused of fabricating statements and omitting contradictory evidence. Despite the intrigue and the speculation surrounding Pettersson's involvement, he remained a largely absent figure in the final stages of the investigation due to legal restrictions. Under Swedish law, a case can't be reopened against a person who has been found not guilty unless significant new evidence surfaces. Thus, without the murder weapon or a clear motive, Pettersson's role in the Palme case remains a tantalizingly unresolved puzzle. Victor Gunnarsson, a Swedish radical often referred to as the 33-year-old in the press, was briefly apprehended for the murder of Olof Palme, but hastily released due to a quarrel between law enforcement and prosecutors. Gunnarsson was linked to several extremist factions, including the European Workers' Party, the Swedish offshoot of the LaRouche movement. His home on the outskirts of Stockholm was found littered with party flyers expressing animosity towards Palme. In 1993, Gunnarsson's life came to a grisly end in the Blue Ridge Mountains, his naked body bearing two .22 caliber gunshot wounds to the back of his head. Some conspiracy theorists speculate that Gunnarsson was a pawn manipulated by a foreign power, who subsequently orchestrated his death 8 years later to obliterate any traces of their involvement. Meanwhile, alternative theories about Palme's murder began to proliferate. These included potential involvement by the South African apartheid regime, angered by Palme's support for the African National Congress, and the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, who felt threatened by Palme's negotiation of peace talks between Turkey and the PKK. But no conclusive evidence could tie any of these factions to the crime. An alternate conspiracy theory implicates both the CIA and Propaganda Due, an enigmatic pseudo-Masonic Italian lodge presided over by Licio Gelli. In a cryptic telegram sent to Philip Guarino, Gelli chillingly hinted that the Swedish tree will be brought down. Claims of the CIA's hand in the assassination were first aired by Richard Brennecke, an Oregon-based businessman purporting to be a former CIA operative, during a televised interview on RAI television in July of 1990. The CIA promptly dismissed Brennecke's allegations, unequivocally denying that Brennecke had any prior relationship or association with the agency. Stig Engström, often referred to as the Skandia Man, has emerged as an intriguing suspect in the perplexing assassination of Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme. Engström, a seemingly unassuming figure who worked for a Skandia insurance company, hence his moniker, was initially considered a bystander, but investigative journalist Thomas Pettersson's extensive research painted him in a new and potentially sinister light. The Skandia insurance company is situated uncomfortably close to the murder scene. Engström was a known critic of Palme and his political ideology, leading to speculation that he might have encountered the Prime Minister by happenstance and on a deadly whim decided to pull the trigger. Engström himself met an untimely demise in the year 2000, adding a further layer of enigma to his role in the story. According to Pettersson, numerous pieces of evidence covertly etched in the crime scene narrative pointed towards Engström. The descriptions provided by multiple witnesses of the fleeing assassin curiously matched Engström's physical characteristics. However, despite his insistence that he was on the scene immediately following the crime, no one could verify his presence after the fatal shots rang out. The inconsistencies extended further. Engström's claims of having interacted with Mrs. Palme, the police, and his supposed involvement in the resuscitation attempts of Palme were never corroborated. His identification of those present at the scene aligned suspiciously well with the individuals the killer likely encountered, and he was oddly unable to identify those who arrived after the shooting. Despite his overt criticisms of Palme's politics, known financial struggles, and a growing dependency on alcohol, the precise motives for Engström to commit such a heinous act remain shrouded in mystery. A particularly compelling piece of Pettersson's theory suggests that Engström's guilt could be conclusively established by locating and examining the murder weapon, a revolver potentially owned by an acquaintance of Engström's, a passionate gun collector. While the evidence against Engström is largely circumstantial, the alignment of these various threads weaves a tantalizing hypothesis about his involvement in the murder. The murky motives and cryptic actions of the Skandia Man offer a compelling dimension to the unsolved mystery of Prime Minister Olof Palme's assassination. To understand the depth of the enigma surrounding Palme's murder, it's vital to delve into the political climate of Sweden at the time. Palme's liberal approach to politics stood in stark contrast to the conservative undercurrents running through parts of Swedish society. The public reaction to his murder was a reflection of this ideological divide, with some viewing him as a martyr, while others saw his assassination as a consequence of his contentious policies. The legacy of Olof Palme, however, extends far beyond the borders of Sweden. His unwavering dedication to the causes he believed in garnered him international recognition. His assassination sent ripples through global politics, emphasizing the fragility of peace and the profound effects a single act of violence can have on a nation's political landscape. With over 10,000 people interviewed, 134 individuals claiming responsibility, and countless hours of police work, the investigation into Palme's murder remains the most extensive in Swedish history. With each passing day, the hope for a conclusive verdict dims, leaving behind the chilling reality: the murder of Olof Palme is still unsolved.